Welcome in, everybody, to the CFB Nation All-America podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm Bill Trocchi, senior editor at sportingnews.com, alongside Bill Bender, our national college football writer at sportingnews.com and the president of the Football Writers Association of America. We're coming to you live on our CFB Nation YouTube channel again. If you want to subscribe, just go over to youtube.com, search CFB Nation, and click subscribe. This is our second live podcast of the day, and tonight we are joined by Bryan Driskell from Irish Breakdown for the Tuesday night edition of college basketball. No, not college basketball. For the latest rankings of the College Football Playoff Committee, but as you glance over at ESPN right now, you are seeing college basketball. So we are going to discuss some rivalry weekend, some rooting guides, what needs to happen for certain teams on the bubble this weekend, and how much these big rivalry games actually mean now that all of the focus in college football is on the college football playoff. So, Bryan, thanks for making time for us.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. I'm ready to rock and roll. We got a lot to talk about tonight. Bill's not angry. He's just ready to rock and roll. We got a lot of great stuff.
Locked in for rivalry week. I'm not mad yet.
It's going to be fun because this basketball game has still got a ways to go. So we were thinking about starting later, but we're like, no, we got a lot to talk about. So we're going to have some fun talking about. Obviously, we'll preview the rankings are going to come out tonight, but then also have a little bit of fun talking about some of the big games this weekend. I think Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, there are games that could impact the rankings when you consider that Navy is still, and they need help, but they're still in the conversation. But a big win over Memphis might help them out quite a bit. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
You're on mute, Bill.
Sorry about that. I guess I got muted for a second. We back?
We are back, ready to rock and roll.
So Navy, it plays Memphis on Thursday night, and they are still in the running for the American Conference Championship berth, and then that could lead to a college football playoff berth, which would be very interesting because they still have to play Army after the selection comes out. But everybody agreed to it. Everybody was cool with it. And, it's acknowledging that Army-Navy is an exhibition, but everybody's still going to like it. And that leads us kind of to our next topic, is how much these rivalry games really mean. Bill, you're going to be in Ann Arbor for the Ohio State-Michigan game. I will be at Georgia Tech, which is a non-conference rivalry game, but still pretty heated. Of course, we have Texas A&M, and the Iron Bowl, and all kinds of stuff this weekend. So, Bill, I'll start it off with you. We talked this morning about Texas A&M and Texas, and how Texas A&M is pretty safely in the field, even if they lose to Texas. But that school is dying to get to the SEC championship game. They're dying to get to the college football playoff for the first time. And everyone on that sideline is going to feel the meaning of that game. You've been to – this is your 10th Ohio State-Michigan game?
Be the 10th one I've covered for us, yeah.
You've covered for Sporting News. So tell me, can you ever even see a day where this game doesn't really matter?
Well, it matters. I think the adjustment is happening. And, I was saying that this morning on our show, and me growing up in Central Ohio and having family, and then friends that like both sides. It's like you're almost like a politician sometimes, but I think the meaning has changed, and it changed last year because, Michigan beats Ohio State. It's arguably the greatest upset in the history of the rivalry. And instead of, in the past where that might have got a coach fired, Ryan Day uses it as fuel to win a national championship. It's always going to mean something. I spoke with Bill Anders today. He's a former Ohio State kicker, lives here in Pickerington. He was telling me his parents went to the Snow Bowl in 1950, which for people that don't know about the Snow Bowl, I mean, you look up the stats on it. There was a blizzard in Ohio. There was like a billion. I know Brian knows all this. There was a billion punts in the game. He said my parents, it took them 44 hours to get there. His mom's still 97. Janet, she's still alive. And we care about those stories because that's what makes it important. Now, in the future, I think this rivalry is going to feel more like North Carolina and Duke from the standpoint that you can lose and go do other things. I told you guys before we came on, North Carolina and Duke since basketball's on, 11 national championships between those schools. So in those 11 national championship seasons, only 4 of them did North Carolina or Duke sweep their rival. I think that's really interesting to me, at least. The last time it happened, 14-15, Duke swept North Carolina. In 2016-17, North Carolina finished 1-2 against Duke, lost the ACC tournament championship, and won a national title. And I think that's kind of what I'm getting at with Ohio State, Michigan now, is where like Michigan could beat them Saturday and Ohio State could still very easily win a title. So the meaning will change, and I'm starting to accept that that's going to happen. Bryan, go ahead. Like you grew up in Ohio too. You're on mute.
Yeah, I just have a question for you. This is not leading. This is an honest question because you live in Columbus, and as you said, you obviously have ties to both sides. Do you think it still means the same if neither team does win a title? Because I think the last year, Michigan can say whatever they want. Ohio State fans don't care because, dude, I don't care that we lost to you. We won a national championship. But let's just say Ohio State gets beat by Texas. Let's say Texas isn't soft and they actually score and make it 21-21, goes overtime and they win. Texas and Notre Dame play for the title, whatever. Which I would have loved to have seen that. But does it matter more then? Like, do Ohio State fans care more then? Or, let's say Ohio State and Michigan are both 10-2. They're both good. Neither plays for the championship. Does it matter more then? Or is it just never matters as much because all that really matters now is
it still matters. And like you were saying, no, that's the but to the national championship is, you won a national title, but, and I think some of that's exacerbated by the fact that Ryan Day's lost 4 in a row. Like when I tell people there is a hot seat effect to some of their fan base still. You got to beat Michigan this year. And you think, okay, the dude has a higher winning percentage than Newt Rockne, which we'll see if that stands over time. Probably not. But, I mean, I have friends who wanted Ryan Day fired the next day. Like, texting me all day, he needs to be fired. And I'm thinking, and that's why I tell people that game matters a little more than everything else. But I think over time, it's not going to. Because you'll have those outs. Like Michigan, for example, could go 10-2, win this game, and not make the college football playoff. I think, like when you grow up in a sport where the consequences were so severe. And Bryan, I'll ask you this. Had we still been in a 4-team era, and you grew up around here around the Cooper era, like had it been a 4-team playoff last year and Ohio State doesn't make the playoff, would they have considered firing Ryan Day?
Yes.
I agree.
Because, it's funny, the most recent, we remember how dominant Ohio State was in the postseason, but what we forget is Ohio State didn't look good for over a month at the end of the season. I mean, they didn't look good against Nebraska. They didn't look great against Purdue. I mean, they beat Purdue badly, but when you look at, how Indiana beat Purdue and how Notre Dame beat Purdue, and then even the Indiana win late in the year was kind of like the offense still kind of sucked. The defense and special teams really carried the day. I think there was a lot of angst because if you're going to not beat Michigan, you better at least win a championship, right? I mean, you know what I mean? So I think it would have been a little nuts, but I do think there would have been some of that because there was the talk before last year that Ohio State under Ryan Day was not a dominant team. They were more like Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, good enough to be really good every year, but, you always get beat when you play in the big games. And you look at Ryan Day lost to Clemson in 2019. He got blown out by Alabama in 2020, lost to Georgia in 2022. I mean, his only playoff win was beating Clemson in the COVID year, So I do think there would have been calls for that. Do I think that they ultimately would have done it? No, I don't think so. I don't think Gene Smith would have wanted to do that for the new AD. I think that would have been the ultimate reason is look, I'm not going to fire this guy if the new AD wants to make that decision next year. He can do that. But I think there would have been very loud calls for it to the point where it would have made it a very toxic situation for Ohio State, much like with Gus Malzahn. It's like once the Auburn people turned on him, it didn't matter what he was going to do, and it was going to be so toxic that it was impossible to hire good coaches. It was impossible to get top recruits because they're like, dude, I don't even know if you're going to be there. I think it could have gotten to that. It would have probably not been a smart decision, but I mean, coaches make bad decisions all the time. Right, exactly.
You get into these rivalry games. You get it. Yeah, exactly. And who are they going to hire now? And I wanted to switch gears a little bit. Like Texas A&M, I've always maintained, we mentioned it this morning, like they really do hate each other more than Ohio State, Michigan, I think, more than Notre Dame, USC. So we were talking about it before we came on and I'm actually still thinking about it. Let's say Texas beats Texas A&M on Friday and Archibald's out and they just 2-touchdown win, beat Texas A&M. And the Aggies, then they're probably out of the SEC championship, right? Just by their cumulative conference winning percentage. Now, they would need help to get in, I think.
Yeah.
They would need,
I think, Alabama to lose to Auburn, I believe.
And then Ole Miss, let's say Ole Miss loses to Mississippi State. I think they need that, actually. So that which isn't out of the realm of the possibility if Lane Kiffin's wearing an LSU hat. And Alabama is they have a history at Jordan Hare. And then Texas A&M goes to the SEC championship game and loses. Either way, I think there's the but there. Like if they lose, their playoff hopes are endangered. If they win the SEC championship, they're going to their fan base will have to sit there with the amount of pent-up hate that they have for Texas and say, well, we still lost to Texas. So that's it's a but. It's not, but the but is not as severe as it used to be. That's my point. Like,
I agree with that.
It used to be John Cooper. I lived through those Cooper years. They would lose they had a team that had Orlando Pace and Corey Stringer and Eddie George. Like, dude, Brian, you could run through those holes now.
Oh my gosh.
That they had with Pace. Not to knock on you. I'm sure you were good back in the day.
No, you said now. I'm 47 years old.
You could run through those
exactly
holes
how you meant it.
Years, and they lost to Michigan teams. And I just remember the Sundays growing up here that it was like funeral. And it is different in that game.
I grew up in Ohio too at that time as well.
It was different, right?
You'd be like, dude, they were dominant all year. I mean, they had the Outland winner, they had the Heisman winner. It's like, didn't matter. You lost to Michigan. And then the one year you beat Michigan, you don't make it to the championship game because you lost to Michigan State at home.
Right.
I think that absolutely, because back in I kind of miss this about college football, Bill, to be honest with you. I miss watching Charles Woodson go off against Ohio State and have a rose in his mouth because all that really mattered was the Rose Bowl. The championship, that'll be determined by other people. We're trying to get to the Rose Bowl. I do kind of miss that where it wasn't. Like, I actually think Eli Drinkwitz made a great point. And I think people are looking at it like, oh, you're justifying. It's Missouri. They shouldn't have a championship or bust mindset at Missouri. I do kind of miss that. And I don't think it's necessarily great for the sport that it's championship or nothing else matters. I mean, that sounds weird coming from a Notre Dame fan because that's kind of all Notre Dame has ever had. But part of what I loved about college football is that, hey, you may have been ranked higher, but we beat you in the game, or we beat you in the Iron Bowl, or we beat you whatever. And your goal was to win the Rose Bowl. And then that's why I've said I still think the best way to determine a champion is still, if you want to restore tradition and still have a wider field, is to go back to the old bowl tie-in system and then pick your 4 after that.
Well, we should ask Bill. So Bill's a Vandy grad, and they've got you're trying to beat Tennessee this weekend. And even if they don't make the playoff, and you're going for a historical 10-win season, never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think I'll give Bill the floor here. I just think on the other end, Tennessee's looking to stick it to them and say, no, you had this great season, great quarterback, whatever. We're still the Vols. Neither one of those teams probably going to the playoff, but that's the type of petty stuff. I like games like that where there's something on the line. I mean, how do you feel, Bill? Is that everything for you? I know you probably don't love that orange too much.
No, I think, Brian, you're talking about like the only thing that matters is a championship. That's among certain fan bases. I think a fan base like Vanderbilt, there's other goals.
For some, it's playoffs or bust.
Right.
For some.
Yeah. It's whatever. Even not making the playoff, this was a historic season. I think everybody celebrated it and things like that. So it all comes back to expectations. And you guys talked about Ryan Day and how, would he have been fired? Maybe, maybe not if he lost. I mean, if they didn't have a playoff last year and he didn't get to have that 4-game run, but that 4-game run kind of showed how underachieving they were with the talent they had. So, I think a little bit of the criticism, of course, was justified with him. So, yeah, I mean, obviously
you can save a disappointing season. So what you're saying is you can kind of save a disappointing season if you can at least get a shot to get it in the playoff. Like,
Exactly.
here's my thing about Vanderbilt, Bill. Do you think Vanderbilt fans will be happy with 10-2 and a win over Tennessee if they don't make the playoff, or do you think they're just going to spend the whole next 2 weeks whining about not making the playoff?
Yeah,
that's my concern.
Right. No, we'll be thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. I spent the weekend there last weekend. Went to the Kentucky game, and it was just a party in the stands. I mean, they just destroyed Kentucky. It was 45-3 at the end of the third quarter, and like just every time out, the music and everything. And, you know, Diego is balling out, and all of a sudden he's in the Heisman conversation right now. And I think, you know, they want Clark Lee locked up. That's more of a concern than whether or not they're going to make the playoff. And especially, you know, if they beat Tennessee and go 10-2, I mean, they look like a playoff team right now. I mean, they're playing well on defense. They're variety on offense. They have a great quarterback. So they could compete, and I would like to see them compete, but I'm not going to be crushed. You know, I've seen some bowl projections. Bender, I don't know where you had them. I've seen Miami, Vanderbilt at the Gator Bowl. That'd be fun. Like, I think people would not be disappointed with that.
Let me see here. Pull them up.
Yeah, pull that up. So,
I totally intentionally put Ohio versus Nebraska in the Frank Solich Bowl. That was I do. Hey, that's ironic you bring it up. Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte, Vanderbilt versus Miami, Florida. And Bill just hit on it. 10-2. Michigan beats Ohio State. Their fans are going to spend 2 weeks complaining that they belong in the college football playoff at 10-2, even though they played a horrible Big Ten schedule and had 2 very bad road losses. Miami's going to spend the entire 2 weeks at 10-2 if they're landlocked out of the ACC championship, complaining that they should be in the playoff. And that's the interesting thing to me, guys, is I think we wrote about it Saturday night that there's 17 teams, including Notre Dame, 17 Power 4 teams and Notre Dame that have 2 losses or less. So I don't think we're having the 3-loss argument this year. You're going to have 2-loss teams out of power conferences.
Oh, God. Let Texas beat freaking Texas A&M, and we're going to have to listen to those idiots completely.
And then 9-3 Texas is going to say.
Definitely going to be – they're going to have an argument. They are –
No, they won't. You got smacked by a 3-8 Florida team. Shut up. If you're a Texas fan, shut up.
They'll find a way.
Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois and got to the national championship game. You're allowed to have a mulligan. That was a mulligan. Losing at Ohio State by 3.
You can't have 3 mulligans. You can't have 3 mulligans.
Bill and Brian are arguing it's just not the Bill and Brian we've come to expect. I'm going to sit back and enjoy this.
I don't like Bills.
Man, Brian's got a problem with Bills.
You can't lose to a 3-8 football team. Northern Illinois' bad loss. That was an 8-5 football team. That's their only loss. Texas will have lost 3 games. You don't have a beef to get in over 2-loss teams when you lost to a 3-8 Florida team.
That's not how we're going to do this. You can't do it like that. You can't go straight 1 loss when the schedules vary so greatly and you only look at the loss column. You can't just look at the loss column.
There are not enough wins on their resume for them to justify getting in against teams who will have comparable wins and worse loss and better losses.
I know. I mean, Oklahoma could.
I agree with you. To your point you just made, I agree with you. You don't just look at the loss column, but it's the same argument you made last year. Teams that are in the playoffs don't lose to 3-8 teams. Nobody else has a loss like that. So it's not just the loss column. There's an egregiousness to the losses that says, when you lose to that kind of team in a game where you got dominated from start to finish, the only tie was 0-0. That's it. You got thoroughly outplayed. You lose your argument. Unless you have a comparable resume. And when you have more losses than another team, like I'll say this, there's a context in which they could make an argument if a team that has 2 losses does not have any good wins, but I don't know who that team is, except maybe Vandy. But I still think Vandy's been more impressive in some of their wins than Texas. So I just don't think you can make a case at 9-3 when
Texas
you have
won the
that
head-to-head.
bad of a loss.
Unfortunately, Texas won the head-to-head in that one, right?
But head-to-head,
they got a black mark because of the Georgia loss. They got a black mark because of the Florida loss.
They got smashed.
And they get, I would say, half a mark with Ohio State. They played them better than anybody else in the country.
But that's my point. Had Texas played North Texas in the opener and beat them in 10-2, they're probably in the top 10 based on the helmet.
Well, we wouldn't count it
Not
as a win
after
or a loss.
Georgia.
It's just a mismatch.
Not after
but
the Georgia loss. See, people
I
keep
think-
saying that, Bill, but I don't know that I agree with that. Everybody keeps saying that. But my whole thing is, if you look at Texas's resume, like, is it really that strong? I actually think that losing to Ohio State by 7 is something that has helped their resume throughout the year. Because
Me too.
otherwise, we're looking at their schedule saying, okay, you beat Oklahoma, great. You beat Vandy, it's pretty good. Your next best win is what? To Arkansas? You know, I mean,
Probably,
if
or
they beat
like
A&M,
something like that,
if they beat A&M next week, that's a different conversation, right? I mean, the rest of your schedule's trash. You need
Right.
an
If you get
overtime
the
to beat
A&M win,
Kentucky.
that's a
You need
huge win.
overtime to beat. If they're a 2-loss team and they beat A&M next weekend, then they're top 10. I don't think they're top 10 now because you got destroyed. Like, there's two things to me that you better have something really special to overcome. Really bad losses. So, like Notre Dame, really bad loss. That's why Notre Dame was not in the top 4 last year, because they had that really bad loss to Northern Illinois. But then they ran the table, had ranked wins and all that other good stuff, and blew people out. The second one is that's Florida's loss to, or Texas loss to Florida. The second one is you can't get blown out. Like, I just have a problem with teams that get blown out. Like I said this in 2017 when Notre Dame lost to Miami. Remember going into Stanford? There was still if this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, Notre Dame might still get in. I said, no, they don't belong in, because you don't belong in the playoff when you get destroyed by somebody, especially late in the year. It's not like USC in 2016 where USC was a completely different team by the time we got to November. Notre Dame got blown out in November by Miami.
But
I mean,
had
Texas
Texas,
blew out in November
but
as well.
they blew them out for a quarter. It was they blew them out in the fourth quarter.
Texas
They-
had the ball.
To
the
your
first
point,
half of that game was not competitive.
it was
Texas
14
had
to
no
10.
shot at. Yeah, but
It
if
was-
you watch the game, it
I
was
did
not.
watch the game.
It's like the Michigan Ohio State game. I think it was Harbaugh's first year. It was like 13 to 10 at halftime. But you watch
then
the
it
game,
was
you're
a
like, this
blunt.
game's gonna get
Then
up.
they got smacked in the second half. Correct.
But you were getting out.
But a 10-2 Texas team that beats Texas A&M, and it's the last thing we see.
Then they have then they're in.
Then they're probably in. And so that's what I'm saying.
at
Like,
that point.
and Oklahoma a lot. That would have been one of the arguments. Oklahoma at 10-2 lost, but they have the Michigan win. I'm good with Oklahoma too, by the way. They're fine at 10. You know, they've played a tough schedule. You can't say they didn't.
At 8? You mean 8?
I mean, I'm fine with them wherever they are. Like, if they're in, now we can do an Oklahoma Notre Dame argument. It'd be fine. I think they're pretty even.
No,
I think Notre Dame's a better team.
I think Notre Dame's a better team. I think Notre Dame has all the better metrics, but I think Oklahoma's November of beating 4 straight ranked opponents, I don't care how ugly it is something you have to give some credit to.
And they allow 14 points a game. They're good.
If you were asking me, now they only score like 18 points a game. If you were asking me who do I think is better, I would say Notre Dame's better. Would I rank Notre Dame ahead of Oklahoma? Yes. Am I going to argue for someone who says Oklahoma should be ahead? No, because I completely get it. I think that's my difference between like Alabama and Oklahoma. Is Alabama's played well in October-ish, weighed well-ish. They're not playing great in November. Oklahoma's beating these teams in November. You know, and I think that does matter.
They get outgained every game, but they still seem to win the game.
Notre Dame, Oklahoma.
Somebody in one of our chats last week said this, guys, and I think they made a great point. Oklahoma this year is like 2012 Notre Dame. It's never pretty, but they just keep finding ways to win.
Yeah,
you know, and I think there's some merit. Obviously, that Notre Dame team won all their games and beat a pretty good Oklahoma team on the road. But the point being, they don't win sexy like a lot of teams now do with scoring a lot of points. They win kind of old school. You know, just make enough plays to win. Like, what, they get almost outgained by 200 yards to Alabama and won?
Notre Dame, Oklahoma.
And like 100 at Tennessee.
Yeah, they would. I would watch Notre Dame, Oklahoma in the first round and be very intrigued by that matchup. No question. So it's just a matter of who gets that home game. Is it in South Bend or is it in Norman? And they're proven to be pretty damn good in Norman, which makes it fun.
You know what gives me what is why I would not push back? I would rank Notre Dame ahead of Oklahoma, but another reason is I do give a little bit of extra credit to teams that are willing to schedule well out of conference. And they did schedule Michigan this year out of conference, and that matters to me. You know, obviously the bad loss to Texas is not great, but you've kind of overcome that to a degree. You lost by 17, but Texas is a ranked team. It's not a 3-9 team. You lost to Ole Miss, and then you've had back-to-back road wins over top 25 teams. So I'm okay with it, but I give them a little bit of credit because they did play Michigan in the non-conference. And Temple's a quality, like a solid non-conference game. That teams turned out to be decent, and they went on the road and played them. So that matters a little bit to me. But if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I don't care where that game is. I would like that matchup very much.
It'd be fun.
Brian, are you worried about Miami's placement tonight? Is that what you're watching from a Notre Dame perspective when we get to the rankings after this basketball game? 2 minutes, 48 seconds remaining here.
Not really. I think that narrative is more of an ESPN thing. I mean, there's a reason the committee has had them 8 spots apart. I think people are taking that we don't compare the head-to-head because they're not in the same area. I think now people are
getting closer week after week. They keep getting closer.
I still think when you look at the resume, all that Miami has is the head-to-head. I mean, head-to-head has to matter. It absolutely has to matter. But it's not this giant trump card where if you're getting dominated in every other single metric, head-to-head's less impressive, all these other things less impressive, your losses are worse, you don't have better wins other than the Notre Dame game, then head-to-head kind of goes out the window a little bit. It can't be this automatic trump card because then we get into this really loopy, okay, well then why isn't SMU ahead of Miami?
Right.
Well, they have more losses. So what you're saying is the rest of the resume's not as good. Exactly.
So that's where we're gonna have a.
Did you like Virginia Tech's tack-on touchdown on the last play of the game, a 20-yard pass on 4th down there?
I mean, I get why Miami did that. I still think it's dumb. Like the committee doesn't watch the game. Like they didn't watch. It almost kind of looks worse for you because like you had to call timeout on 4th down to punch a touchdown in against 3-8 Virginia Tech. Like here's where I'm not worried about the ranking. The only thing that would make me nervous is if Miami goes out there and just annihilates Pitt this weekend in a far more impressive fashion when Notre Dame did, which is going to be hard to do because the committee watched that game and saw that it was 37-9 until the final play of the game against Notre Dame's backup defense.
Well,
but let's say Miami goes out and beats them 51-10. Now Miami has a little bit of an argument.
Not happening in 30-degree weather, man. Go ahead.
You're going to have a problem with this format. And then again, here's something that's going to happen in about 10 days, I think, in the ACC especially. I think SMU is going to win the ACC. I think they're going to win on Saturday out at Cal because Cal just fired their coach, and I'm not sure they're going to get the emotional bump from it. I think Miami's going to get landlocked out of the ACC championship game because I actually think Virginia is going to beat VTech. And the problem the ACC is going to run into here is SMU is going to win in Charlotte and be a 3-loss team in the playoff and probably ranked behind Miami, who's not going to get in. That's going to be another hitch in this conference championship model where if we just ditched the conference championship games, at least for the Power 4, I mean, why not? Why? I'm good with it.
I do not disagree with that at all. The conference
because
everybody made for one reason and one reason only, Bill, and it was to make money. It was it was for no other reason than that. Let's be honest about it.
And I don't like that gets held over. I don't really, for whatever, whenever I criticize Notre Dame, this isn't a criticism. I don't care that they don't have a conference championship game. And I don't see much value in these. And that's going to be something we're going to look at really critically and be like, wait a minute, SMU 3 losses, they're in. Miami's going to be probably ranked 13 or whatever, and they're going to get locked out. And they're going to be like, well, what was the point of this? Because
for all the Miami fans that want to cry about Notre Dame's head-to-head, well, here's a real simple solution to you being landlocked out. Don't get beat by SMU.
Correct. That's the other.
I mean, beat
you
SMU,
be one of the
you're
top
in this
2 teams
conversation,
in a weak ACC. You got to be one of the top 2 teams.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that could happen. And then, the rest of the conferences, like the Big Ten championship game, I'm excited to watch Indiana and Ohio State, but there's also, well, what if they play in the semifinals 3 weeks later?
Or what if in a really physical game between 2 really good teams, whether it's those 2 teams, whether it's Texas A&M or A&M and Georgia, whether it's Texas Tech and BYU, who are 2 physical teams, your starting quarterback gets knocked out for the year. Your starting running back gets knocked out for a month. Like
hello Carson Beck, 2024.
Right. Well, if you listen to Georgia fans before they played Notre Dame,
they were
fine. They were fine. They were fine.
After Notre Dame beat them by 13, well, we didn't have our starting quarterback. But
I think when you think about the college football calendar and how it's getting too long and everything's messed up, and the Lane Kiffin thing is part of it, and that's going to bring more attention to it. I think the first thing on the chopping block is championship weekend. I've heard Ross Dellinger talk about that. A lot of the commissioners, I mean, the SEC loves it beyond belief. It's a strong tradition in Atlanta. It's a strong tradition with all the teams. They all like playing in it. And Bill, you yourself, you said many times that like the Big Ten championship last year between Penn State and Oregon, that didn't really float your boat, but you really liked the Texas-Georgia game. And
I do like
both
the
kind of
SEC.
similar in that both teams were still in, but it was just a cool game. SEC championship game is a cool game, but the rest of them, they're kind of add-ons. No one really loves them. They're inconvenient. And so can the SEC fight off this rising tide of the sentiment that we don't need these games anymore?
Well, the Big 12 has gone. That's the only one out of the major four I haven't been to, and that one's no, I have actually. I forgot. Kimberly and I. Here was what a romantic first date. This or among our first dates. She's a big Oklahoma fan, and we went to Oklahoma, Nebraska at Arrowhead Stadium. There was a blizzard that weekend. We drove together. We had to stand on a cardboard piece of. They were selling cardboard for $3 because the bleachers were ice. So I stood on a piece of cardboard.
Did you dress in Sooner colors for her?
Oh yeah, I have an Oklahoma shirt around here somewhere, I guess. But the game was terrible. The Sooners won. I think Paul Thompson was their quarterback. But yeah, so I've been to a Big 12 championship game, and the energy was good there because it was Oklahoma, Nebraska. I believe Zach Taylor was the quarterback for Nebraska, which is a great irony there.
Probably night game and freezing, right?
Yeah, it was so cold, so ridiculously cold. And then we stayed in some terrible hotel. We're driving back, and I'm like, we'll stay in some hotel, and it was horrible, but we got married, so it worked out. And are still very married, and I'm dodging housework right now by doing this podcast. So that's the key to a successful marriage. But anyway, so I've been to all of them. Big Ten, I can live with. I grew up without it. I'm good without it. ACC, I've been to a couple of those. They're fun, but the SEC is more fun than the rest of them. But
it may be more fun, but it's not any more useful. I mean,
correct.
And again, it's something that started in the 90s is not something you get to say, well, we care about that tradition. You don't care about the tradition of not having Texas and Oklahoma in your league. You don't care about the tradition of having the teams that have been in your league since the 50s, right? You don't care about that tradition, but the tradition that started in the 90s when TV contracts became a thing, that you care about because it makes money. It has been a lot of great games, but it's still not useful. It was useful because when teams expanded, it was the only way to truly create a conference champion where you could somewhat say, it was settled on the field. Because once you started getting to 12 teams, it was like, well, you don't play everybody, so you have to have some sort of conference championship game. It was your decision to expand the leagues, which was done for TV money, that you have it. Like, if let's just say hypothetically that there was the king of college football said, listen, we're going to create a new rule. We're going to pull all the TV deals together. And all Power 5 teams get paid the same amount of money. And anyone that wants to get out of the league that they're currently in can get out. You don't think there'd be a mass exodus from all these leagues that teams – you don't think Maryland's going to go back to the ACC? You don't think that the Big East is going to reform? You don't think that a bunch of teams are going to go independent like Notre Dame did and the Big 8 becomes a thing again and the Southway? You get what I mean? I'm being a bit hyperbolic there, but this is all done for TV revenue. That's the only reason all these teams join conferences. And so, like, they can miss me with the whole it's tradition thing. It's not tradition. You did it to make money. And if you truly want what's best for your teams to go win a championship, then you don't play the conference championship games, especially since they're both going to get in anyway.
Devil's advocate, after Bender spent 18 hours doing tiebreaker stories for sportingnews.com, which if anyone needs to find out where their team is, you can go to sportingnews.com and you will find the latest. Throughout the weekend, we'll be updating all the scenarios after every window of games on Friday and Saturday. So can you imagine if Duke was the ACC champion and didn't have to win an ACC championship game? At least the championship game saves us from that. These tiebreakers are very convoluted. Needless to say, the conferences are too big. Not everyone plays everybody. And so the championship game mitigates
Wait,
determining a league
Bill.
champion a little bit because it gives you one more hurdle to clear. That's going to be presumably a difficult game. And so you got two teams, and then they decided on the field because these tiebreakers are coming down to opponents' conference winning percentage and all other kinds of things. That's just like, okay, all of a sudden they're a champion. That it really is a problem. Needless to say, we've all known it for a while that these 16, 18 team conferences, no one plays everybody. And you could have a 6-way tie at 6-2 and only a couple teams play each other and all that stuff. So the conference championship game helps with that just a little bit, I guess. That's my point.
Bill, what if Duke here? This is a serious question, I guess, that we maybe should write about. If Duke wins the ACC at 8-5, which is technically possible, right?
But at least they'll have to win a championship game.
But would they even be a top 5 conference champion? Because would the American Conference champion and JMU be ranked ahead of them? In that event, the ACC doesn't get that automatic berth from Duke, who probably should not be ranked anywhere near the top 25, meaning that's how Miami gets in the playoff. Not out of the question.
Let me ask you guys this question.
No.
do you guys think there should be a cutoff? There should be a minimum ranking for teams to get in?
Yes.
Like if your conference champion doesn't rank inside the top 18 or 16 or 20 or something like that, then I would say,
yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Brian, we lived through the BCS era of conference championship games, and you probably know this better than me, but like there was a K-State team that beat Oklahoma that had like 4 losses. Remember with Sproul?
Remember when UConn made it in the Orange Bowl against like Louisville or something like that? You had Urban Meyer's undefeated Utah team play like Pitt, who had like 3 or 4 losses from the Big East.
We've lived through that. Yeah. So there should be a cutoff, and I don't know what should it be? 16?
I would say maybe go 5 outside of whatever your number is in the current 12, like 17. Or you could say, look, if the ACC's champ doesn't make it in because they're not ranked low enough, but as long as there is an ACC team in the top 12, so like they don't get bumped out. So like let's say Miami finishes 12 or 11, and Duke wins the ACC or SMU wins the ACC, and they're not ranked high enough. Do you give the ACC the automatic, if they have a team in the top 12, that team doesn't get bumped out? Or, or do you just lose it all together, and then it just so happens that if one of your teams is in the top 12, they make it in? Because the problem is, in order to make this actually happen, you're going to have to do something to try to give those teams a chance to have one of their teams in. Otherwise, they're never going to agree. Like they're not going to agree to. There's a chance we get no teams in. That's the problem. It's a problem they created with the mass expansion, but like that's the problem.
You're putting everything on the committee. Then you're basically disqualifying the auto bid. And that's not the sentiment.
It would be like if a team gets triggered out, you could have a team triggered in if they also like if you're like, for example, the ACC this year, if SMU or Duke don't rank high enough,
if Miami's 12,
does, right?
Miami's 12 and SMU's 14, and SMU won the championship game, and you give the bid to Miami. That's the committee just saying nope. The other teams are better. Like
I kind of want Duke to win the ACC championship now,
just to see how it goes.
To see what they do. Like they would.
I mean, there's a chance the ACC doesn't. In that scenario, the ACC doesn't get in. I don't think a 4-loss Duke team is ranked higher than JMU or
Duke 5 losses.
Duke's path isn't
are they 5 losses now?
They've lost 5 games.
Right. Their path isn't that complicated, right?
No, it's not. Like I'll read it off to you guys.
They just made 2 other results.
A little cheat sheet from the week of me doing this, which by the way, the ACC, I made the joke earlier.
One of them's a pretty big upset, like Virginia Tech over Virginia.
All right. So Duke this is their path. The Blue Devils would make the ACC championship game with a win against Wake Forest. Doable. Right. That's a 1-point spread. A Pitt loss to Miami. That's doable. A Virginia loss to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's won the last 4. And either a win by Syracuse against Boston College. Probably not. I think Notre Dame just scored on Syracuse again. Or NC State against North Carolina, which I mean, imagine if you're sitting there, if Duke's sitting there counting on like Bill Belichick not to screw them over so they can get to Charlotte. What a world. So like, that's not a ridiculous scenario. When I looked at it the first time, I'm like, I mean, maybe. But with one, that's the problem with these is if just one little thing goes the other way, you're done. But yeah, I can't imagine being in the ACC office if they have to justify Duke. And I would just make the joke with my buddies in the immediate aftermath that they are not getting any calls in that game, that every pass interference is going the other way.
No, they are going to get so screwed over by the officials in the ACC title game. Like,
speaking of the ACC, Brian, I want to get the Notre Dame perspective on the conference coming out on their social media and promoting Miami ahead of Notre Dame when Notre Dame competes in the ACC in a lot of sports.
So John Bryce from Football Scoop has done some good work on this, and he's actually talked about this a little bit recently, but Notre Dame was not happy because there are bylaws that say you can't negatively talk about a team in the ACC, and Notre Dame is an ACC team. Even though they're not for football, they're an ACC team. There's an agreement that you don't talk about, you don't promote people over us. So that was not well received, and it's kind of dumb by the ACC also, because if in all reality, Notre Dame has done many things that have helped this league survive, including convincing, like other teams to join the league, Stanford and Cal to join the league, joining the ACC. Everybody talks about, the ACC saved Notre Dame. Notre Dame also saved the ACC, because if it wasn't for Notre Dame, the ACC was leaning towards canceling the season until Notre Dame started talking about wanting to join the ACC. That also happened to be a record year TV revenue-wise for the ACC. I just want to remind people of that as well. And so it's kind of like, you don't all these coaches want to cry about it. Like, you guys are going to kill the golden goose, and that's probably not smart when you're on the verge of losing Florida State and Clemson and you know what I mean? Like, you should be embracing Notre Dame right now in a lot of ways behind the scenes, and then just leave Notre Dame out of it. Like tonight, the ACC finally put something up about the teams in front of them. Like, hey, how about you guys worry about Utah and Vandy and BYU before you worry about Notre Dame? You got to, because at the end of the day, wouldn't it be smart for you to have both of them in? And so that was not well received.
I didn't think
Notre Dame, according to John Bryce, who's very connected, John has good sources, Notre Dame was not happy about that and let it be known that they weren't happy about that, which is why I don't think you've seen as much tweeting about Notre Dame from the ACC in this last week.
Yeah. You and I talked about it, Bill, at the time. I was like, what's he doing? What is Jim Phillips doing right now? I didn't think that was a wise thing. And
can we be honest about something else? There's only a couple people in the ACC that have the fundraising ability to get out of the TV deal. Notre Dame's one of them. You might want to be careful, because if Notre Dame leaves your league, you're screwed. Go look at the top watched ACC games every year, and the vast majority of them include games against Notre Dame. So
Notre Dame doesn't have flexibility given the 9-game requirements now for everybody. Plus,
I mean, those Notre Dame games would have more. Those Notre Dame games would have more viewers if, say, they were playing Michigan State and Purdue and Michigan.
There's already one ACC team. Like, let's be real. They just signed a home-and-home with Auburn. There's already an ACC team that has signed a 12-year deal with Notre Dame called Clemson. You don't think Pitt, BC, Syracuse, teams like that are going to sign Notre Dame? You don't think Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern will be chomping at the bit to play Notre Dame? Because everybody says, those teams aren't going to want to hurt their playoff resumes. Well, those teams aren't worried about the playoffs. Those teams are worried about putting butts in the seat, in the seats. There's plenty of – everybody says, Notre Dame won't be able to – first of all, half the teams in the ACC would then just start calling Notre Dame and say, hey, we'd still like to play you. Right. Can we sign a deal? They're just going to re-sign Stanford then. Okay, Stanford, you're back on. So they won't have a problem.
I like Notre Dame's schedule. I like Notre Dame's schedule that isn't the ACC part.
Agreed.
I'm going to be honest. Like, I like watching them play at Arkansas. That was cool this year. I like watching them play Boise. I like, when they slip in the big, even when they play. I know Purdue's terrible, but I like watching Notre Dame play Purdue. I don't hate it.
It's a game that you and I grew up watching. Michigan State's the first team that I would love to see back on the schedule. I'm glad that they're back on the schedule next year. I believe next year they're back on the schedule.
Yeah. Well, that's not a very good Michigan State team, but
but it's just that's the games we grew up watching. the ACC has been very good for Notre Dame off the field, which is about getting Notre Dame in front of. That's why they're killing it in North Carolina and Virginia and South Carolina and Georgia, and from a recruiting standpoint. But on the field, it's been an anchor. What's the first thing that people say when they want to hammer Notre Dame's resume? You just beat up a bunch of crappy ACC teams because the ACC sucks.
Right.
I mean, seriously, that's what it is.
Apparently, the last 10 seconds of
wrong.
this basketball game are taking a year, judging by the comments. Like
13 seconds to go. USC's got the ball down 3.
As a sixth grade girls basketball coach, I can say you don't take the timeout at the end. You just let them play. Yeah. So let's get this thing going. We gotta get these rankings up. So,
I'm just looking at Notre Dame's.
I want to ask you guys one question before we get into that. Do you guys think that there's any movement 11-15 tonight? 11-14.
Let me pull them up.
Do you think there's any argument to be made? Because I do, that Oregon should jump ahead of Ole Miss after they beat USC.
I think they should.
I like 8 people.
Bill to test. I've liked Oregon a lot. If I was doing the top 6, I would do the top 3 as is. I would probably keep Georgia there, although I really like Texas Tech, and then I would put Oregon 6. I would put Texas Tech 5.
The computers love Oregon.
Yeah.
They didn't have any good wins. Now they've got 2 in the last month. So I think you can make the case that their resume is better than Ole Miss's now. I think a week ago I was totally fine with Ole Miss ahead of Oregon. Now I think it's a much stronger case, because I hope that the committee doesn't just do what the AP poll does, which is if you win, you pretty much just stay where you are. It's supposed to be a reevaluation of resumes every week. You throw out the rankings from last week and you reevaluate everything as you are. I think if you do that, you see that Notre Dame's metrics went way up, Oklahoma's went down. You see that Oregon's metrics took a big jump. Now their surface level resume also looks better, because now they have that win over USC, who will still be ranked tonight.
Yeah, that was.
I think all those things are topics of conversation. Oh, they needed that, and they won it convincingly. Like, it wasn't a blowout, but they were the better team. Like, you watch it for 60 minutes, Oregon was better than USC.
I think Oregon's dangerous. Period. I mean, they're good up front. Dante Moore doesn't really screw it up. They can run the ball. They're just not. I think we've penalized them because Indiana beat them in the fourth quarter. That was a tight game all the way through. I think we would have a very different opinion had Oregon beat Indiana. They'd probably be number 2.
Well, I just feel like Oregon was a millimeter from losing to Iowa. That pass by Dante Moore that set up the winning field goal for them. I mean, they were that close. They lost by 10 points to Indiana, and they had a pick 6 in their favor at home. And they, so that was a convincing win by Indiana against Oregon. And I agree with that. I didn't see anything on their resume until they squeaked them out against Iowa. Then they beat USC thanks to a ton of special teams mistakes by USC.
I actually think that Iowa win meant something to me, though.
Yeah, I do
to
too.
Watch a team like Oregon to go on the road, play a gritty game in crappy weather, and find a way to win. Sometimes, like we get too obsessed with sometimes, not just all of us. We have these moments. We all make these arguments. Well, you barely won that game, but sometimes it's that kind of game that shows me this team can win when they're not on the best teams. Don't always win by beating people by 40 if they play decent schedules. You know what I mean? Like, we had the Florida State in 13. That's about the only. I mean, even LSU in 19 needed a 23-20 win over Auburn. Sometimes it's okay. Can you lose when you can't throw the ball because of the weather, or can you win when you're that way? Can you win when your offense isn't clicking? Can you win with your defense? Can you win with your offense? And I think we've always known Oregon can win with offense. What that showed me is you can win with your defense also, and make some of those tough plays. And I actually learned a lot about them in that win. To be honest with you, like, I thought I learned a little something about USC when they went on the road and beat Nebraska in an ugly game and had a sloppy win over Iowa. It's like, okay, that's a little bit of a turn. They just don't have.
Well, the SEC publicizes those so much better than the Big Ten. That's what it comes down to. Oh, you went to Starkville and got out of there because they were waving those cowbells. Or, hey, Alabama got out of Alabama. They were playing Sandstorm at South Carolina, but Alabama got out.
Every year I hear some argument that this is the toughest place to play, and it's always some SEC stadium.
But, like, when the Big Ten fan says, well, yeah, dude, you were at Kinnick, and it was wet and horrible, and you barely won.
Oh, Iowa sucks. Iowa's not any
terrible.
Good.
They can't complete a pass, and it's like,
exactly.
No, dude,
they are terrible. They can't complete a pass.
But so
they're not terrible, though.
South Carolina can't complete a pass either, but just because
they have an elite defense, they can run the football, they play great special teams. Their offense does what's needed to win.
That is such the difference between the SEC and the Big Ten, because Big Ten fans, we don't run around saying like, oh my gosh, what a great win by Oregon. It's just, they got out alive. You know,
I had to listen to freaking Arkansas and SEC people telling me this offseason that, man, y'all better be ready, man. That's arguably the toughest place to play, man. You know, like, I'm like, shut up. Donald Reynolds Stadium, it's the toughest place to play. Like, you guys said the same thing about freaking, I'm drawing a complete blank on Texas A&M's home field. Kyle Field last year. Then it's Tennessee. Then it's Alabama. Then it's Georgia. Like, LSU. And I'm like, well, LSU's, to me, the only one that actually has a legitimate argument to make that's been a brutal place to play for a long time.
So, Brian, I did a study. You ready? I wish I had all the numbers in front of me, but I did a study last off season, and I looked at a 10-year period, and I looked at every Power 4 team's home field performance, win-loss record against Power 4 teams, and I compared home versus road. You will never guess what team had essentially the biggest home field advantage, or the biggest difference between their home record and their road record. And the answer,
in a certain league or overall?
Overall, the whole country. And the answer, and it's probably even more so now at these last 2 years. I don't have those 2 years of data in there. Arizona State. Arizona State, you could look at it two ways. They have the best home field advantage, or they're the worst road team among the Power 4 teams. But that was the biggest difference.
Having been there to watch a game, I think it's a little bit of both. You know, because it's a different altitude, it's a different climate. It's not an easy place to go to if you have.
Were you at that game that Notre Dame got whipped out there?
Yeah, it was interesting. They were getting killed early. It was 34-3. And then Everett Golson threw a touchdown pass in the fourth quarter to make it 34-31. And then Arizona State then threw a wheel route to a running back who Brian Van Gorder thought it'd be smart to have a D tackle go with him on the wheel route, and went down and scored. And then they threw a pick six. Like, it was funny because it was a blowout. Then Notre Dame charged back, and then they blew them out at the end. But yeah, I was at that game. That crowd for a game like that gets loud. Now, it's not as loud as Athens. It's not as loud as some other, Kyle Field. That was a great place to cover a game. It's not as loud as Michigan. Like, the loudest moment that I ever experienced is when Devin Gardner hit Jeremy Gallon on that wheel. No, it was Denard. When Denard hit Jeremy Gallon on that wheel route at the end of the 2011 game, because that place was silent because Notre Dame had just taken a lead with like less than a minute left. And you could hear the crescendo as the ball got halfway there. You could hear like the sound got to get louder and louder and louder. And the minute he caught that ball, that place went nuts. And that was the loudest singular moment that I had ever experienced in a football game. That's a crazy environment. There's all these places are crazy when your team is good. It's like Alabama wasn't a tough place to play until Nick Saban showed up. It wasn't a tough place to play when Mike Shula was there or Dennis Francione was there. Yeah,
teams like Georgia and Ohio State didn't show up in my study because they beat everybody in home or on the road. It didn't really matter.
Right. Yeah.
You're muted. That's all right.
Yeah, I said the profanity on mute, so that's good.
That's probably good.
That was probably good. But the Wisconsin
loudest moment, Bill. You got a loudest moment ever?
Loudest moment in a stadium.
I know mine. I'll let you
go
think
ahead.
of yours.
Go ahead. I'll think of mine.
Mine, you probably remember this game is 1991 Notre Dame at Tennessee. Rocket Ishmael won the game. He was the hero.
Yeah.
But UT had all the momentum at one point, and Notre Dame tried to run a reverse to the Rocket, and they read it, and they dropped them for about 10, 12-yard loss. And that place was so loud in that moment because it's a very steep stadium, and the noise just went straight up. And like Rocket was the guy. Everyone wanted to beat up Rocket.
That was 90. That was 90, by the way. Yeah.
And so I was at Vanderbilt. I drove over and had crappy seats. I was near the top, and then it was just like the sound. It was just like a cone, and because anytime Rocket did anything, they wanted to kill him, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they finally got their shot, and boy, did that fan base celebrate.
Yeah, he made him pay the rest of the game, though.
See, I'll go the other way.
He made him play the rest of the game.
I don't remember like a louder than anything else. I mean, I'm like maybe 16 in Ohio State when Curtis Samuel scored to beat Michigan in that like the JT Barrett game. I remember more of the silencers, like like the pump fumble and that noise that Brian just described when Michigan State beat Michigan and on the pump fumble, and you could just hear
trouble with the snap.
That whole like you heard everybody shriek when the ball went over. It was wild. That one, Penn State a couple weeks ago, honestly, Oregon, the Drew Aller interception. It went from like frenzied to dead. Being in the one my friends always tell me about is when Texas beat Ohio State on the Lima Swede catch from Vince Young in 05. That's 20 years ago now.
You got the rankings are out now.
Yeah, go ahead. So
we can start going.
Go ahead.
No, they're still chit-chatting about the rules and things like that. Here we go.
Arizona
25.
Here we go. Okay.
Arizona 25. Tulane at 24. Georgia Tech 23. Pitt 22. SMU 21. The parade of ACC teams.
Arizona, like the real Arizona, not Arizona State.
Yeah, no, Arizona, like the Arizona Wildcats. Yeah,
the real Arizona. Wow.
Like the not Arizona State.
Riley's not going to like that.
No, the actual Arizona. I don't know.
Arizona Wildcats, unless they have the wrong graphic up. I mean, it's possible they have the wrong graphic up, but because Arizona State was ranked 25th last week, they're up to 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
SMU. So SMU down at 21. So there's a parade of ACC teams at 23, 22, and 21. 20 is Arizona State. The real Arizona State.
The other real Arizona.
The real Arizona
Tennessee
State.
is at 19. Virginia, 18. Another ACC team. 17, USC. 16, Texas.
So by real quick, by Brian earlier saying you got to be in the top 18, SMU potential ACC champion at 21 right now.
Yeah, well, and Virginia would have that shot too. It's at 18.
Very interesting.
Because I think that's a good Virginia team. Especially when Chandler Morris plays, like he's a legitimate football.
I've been doubting him all year.
I like your cutoff at 18 though, Brian. That's a good rule.
Yeah,
good job.
I've picked against Virginia a bunch, and I never seem to get it. 15, Michigan.
I've been saying for a while if Virginia ever got a quarterback, they'd be a decent team.
One win to get in.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
I don't think that happens. I think they
can
need
they do it, Bill? Can Michigan jump from 15 to 10 to get it with one win?
They can. They're going to need help. They need Oklahoma to lose.
Yeah, they need somebody to get upset. Notre Dame to lose to Stanford, something.
And Oklahoma's one.
Auburn.
Oklahoma would help, and Tennessee would help.
No, I'll say this: USC only dropping to 17, and Pitt jumping up to 22 certainly helps Notre Dame's resume. Vanderbilt at 14.
They need Vanderbilt to lose to Tennessee. That's one.
Of course, somebody's trying to jump onto my YouTube channel. I don't know who that is, but somebody else trying to sign into my YouTube channel, trying to do that. You only have so many. Come on, people. 13 coming out. Utah at 13. So Miami is going to jump Utah. The Utes are down to 13. They're down a spot to 13. So I think Miami's going to jump up.
Keeps
to
beating
12.
crappy teams and keeps jumping up.
Yep. They got to appease those Miami people. They get all upset whenever you tell anyone that they're, they should be rewarded.
The third week in a row they've beaten a mediocre team and have jumped.
Yeah. At least the two previous wins were at least blowouts. That was not a blowout win. But Utah struggling with K-State didn't help their case either. Although K-State's better than Virginia Tech. But
I'm okay with that. The flip, although Utah does score 50 points a game.
I mean, Vanderbilt beat a mediocre Kentucky team. We didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, but they destroyed a mediocre Kentucky team. Well, Vanderbilt, were they
right.
14 last week too?
Yeah. Did not move. 45-3 at the end of the third quarter.
And that had to be fun. I'm sure that would be a to watch. So I think BYU is going to be BYU's 11, so they're still 11, 10-1. So now let's see, does that win over Eastern Illinois, was that enough to put Bama back ahead of Notre Dame? So we'll see. Don't think so. I don't think so. Now all the paranoid Notre Dame fans are texting me, oh, we're in trouble.
So number 10 will be the last team in the field.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be, I think the rest, at least until 7, the next 3 will probably be chalk, right? 10, 9, and 8, Bama, Notre Dame, Oklahoma. Is that what we're thinking?
I would think they keep it the same unless they're getting cute.
Yeah. Bama at 10. So I get another week of Alabama fans crying.
You like it, though.
Notre Dame at 9. So we're still 9, and assume that means
now
Oklahoma's
it's
going to
9
stay
and
at
12.
8.
Miami's within 4 or 3.
And that'd be Oklahoma at 8, right? So now the next question that we really have is, do we see a switch with Ole Miss and Oregon? I think that's the next question that we're going to see about a potential flip. Yeah, I mean, was that win over now? I mean, clearly they liked that win for Oregon because they didn't drop USC down, but 2 spots? USC was 15 last week, right? So they dropped USC down 2 spots.
Right.
So they must have given Oregon a lot of credit for that win, as they should. I do think USC is a good football team. So come on, guys, stop talking. Let's get us to the ranking, and then you guys can talk. That's how this works. Come on. This is annoying. Come on, 8 Oklahoma, so we at least have that. Now we get into what's going to be interesting. Now I think there's more likely to get maybe some movement here a little bit. So
we get that Oklahoma Notre Dame game we want.
Yeah,
I'll be down with that.
Fun. Yeah. Well, I'm still mad that I didn't get to go to Norman in 2012 because I made the dumb decision to get back into coaching that year. So I didn't get to go to Ireland or Norman. So I would love to get a chance to go there.
That was a big win for Notre Dame back then.
It was. Well, I'm just I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I'm also a big fan of just college football. So I love getting to go to these stadiums and just experience different places. Like it better when Notre Dame wins, of course, but yeah, like standing on the Coliseum for the first time, you start thinking about all the things that have happened on that field. Ole Miss is at 7, so Oregon is going to drop. So they leaped Oregon ahead of Ole Miss. Ole Miss is now down to 7.
And they can't drop them any further right now. I mean,
I will have a question for you guys about that.
It gets dicey if they lose the Egg Bowl.
They're out. If they lose the Egg Bowl, they're done.
I agree. I think they are too.
Oregon is 6, so then we're going to probably still have chalk rest away. Texas Tech, I think 5, and then obviously Georgia.
That's probably going to look the same.
Yep.
I mean, they're only a touchdown favorite, less than a touchdown. I mean, it's not like it's
Ole Miss
in the world. Starkville's a tough place to play.
Oh, they could lose. They can absolutely lose that game.
Yeah. Well, especially with everything kind of going on. I mean, Lane Kiffin can say all he wants. Oh, this is a different generation. Texas Tech is 5. So we will get the rest of it will be kind of the same.
Yep. So really, the only development on the bubble is that Miami jumped Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's basically it.
Mm-hmm. And the matchups are the same where, like, when they flash the bracket in a minute, they're going to flash Miami as the ACC champion despite no obvious.
Just so dumb.
Which is like, that's what I'm saying. SMU can do this from 21.
Right. And Virginia.
If I was picking 18. An ACC champion, SMU's my pick right now. And Brian, because I want to hear it. Ole Miss loses to Mississippi State. At knee-jerk reaction, I'd be like, no, you're wrong. But I think you're right. I think the combination of the Lane Kiffin circus, what might happen afterward, I don't know that impacts it, but it would be very easy. It does, and it would be easy to drop them into the – hell, it'd probably be easy to drop them behind Vanderbilt if Vanderbilt beats Tennessee.
100%. I think if Ole Miss loses, even without the Lane stuff, they've got to tough case to make. I mean, you're now banking on beating Tulane and Oklahoma, which is nice, but you lost to Georgia, and then you would have lost to an unranked team on the road. Like, they don't look at that. The rest of their resumes, it's Kentucky, Arkansas, LSU, Washington State in close games. Like, I think those close wins start looking a little bit more like dicey when you've got that extra loss. So I do think that they would drop them down out. I think they're only one spot above Oklahoma now with one more loss than Oklahoma. They're not going to jump. You know what I mean? Like, I think they go behind Bam. I think they get them out because the committee has shown also, like, we'll take extenuating circumstances and impact on our rankings like they did when Jordan Travis got hurt. Because, what people often forget about Jordan Travis getting hurt is Florida State went out and won an ACC championship without him convincingly. And they still dropped him out because of him being out. So I think Ole Miss would be in trouble. They only got to drop 4 spots now. Like, I think that put it past the committee to maybe make that be part of the reason that they did also jump Oregon is now it's a little easier to drop Ole Miss out if they lose this weekend because of all the drama with Lane.
And everybody 1 through 15 has 2 losses or less. So that's the gap you're talking about, Brian. That gap between 2, it's basically the gap from Ole Miss to Michigan. That's not, you can start making weird arguments if Michigan goes out and wins. You can start making weird arguments about Vanderbilt. Not so weird, honestly. They only lost to Texas and Alabama on the road, and they played well. They can't. Texas could have been a lot worse, but they battled back and had an onside kick. So there are going to be some creative arguments with these 2. I said it earlier. These 2 lost teams that might not get into the playoff are going to start coming up with creative ways to argue it. Miami's not the only one. Miami's just the most visible one. And quite frankly, like, I just don't see how they get in without getting to Charlotte right now.
Because they could use an extra data point, and ACC, I don't think it's going to get 2 schools in.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing that's tough for Miami is you could say this weekend, okay, let's say they beat Pitt more convincingly than Notre Dame does. And that's enough for the committee to say, okay, well, we think that maybe, but they've got to then pass Alabama too. I mean, what's the justification for jumping Alabama ahead of Notre Dame because they beat a 5-7 Auburn team?
So
if Notre Dame does the Stanford, what we think, what I mean? Like, that's what puts them in a bit of a tough.
One of your listeners just asked, and I want you to answer this. Will they have Bama jump ND?
But what would be the justification for that?
Well, if they win the SEC championship, that's coming.
That's different. If they do that, then there's an argument to be
then
made.
But just like looking at the board, let's assume Alabama.
Then you can get some potential chaos.
Then and BYU loses to Texas Tech again.
Yeah,
move them down. If you're looking at the board.
Thing is, we'll know the answer to that before the SEC title game,
unless they change their mind.
There's no data point that they can use between Notre Dame and Miami that's going to change how those 2 teams are ranked.
So Notre Dame Miami next week will be a big ranking in theory because you're going to see but I don't know that they can move Miami over Pitt because we just watched Notre Dame beat Pitt by 22 points.
What I'm saying is, let's say they go out and beat Pitt, because you remember when Ohio State leaped TCU in 2014. I think the committee wanted to put Ohio State in the top 4, but I think they needed to be given a reason why. Beating a top 15 Wisconsin team 59-0 was the reason to do that. I think it'd have to be something where Miami beats them, 42-7, and it's just a even more dominant win than what Notre Dame had. I think that's what they need. And if they do that, then they'll have a different, because they'll say, okay, you beat Stanford and Syracuse more convincingly. We beat NC State and Pitt more convincingly, and we have the head-to-head. Like, that would be the advantage that Miami would have.
Here's my danger zone for Notre Dame. If we see chalk this weekend and Notre Dame stays 9, Bama stays 10, BYU stays 11, and BYU's in the Big 12 championship game, Bama's in their championship game. If those 2 teams win against presumably potentially Georgia and potentially Texas Tech, they may jump up and Notre Dame drops out.
I think the
cut line is between Bama and BYU.
I think that depends on what the outcomes of those games are. I also don't think it should be assumed that they won't drop Texas Tech further, because this is a much different committee than last year's team. This committee has not made the same promises about conference title games that last year's committee did, which was stupid and unnecessary to do. So if Texas Tech loses by a field goal to BYU, I'd be a little bit nervous about that. But if Texas Tech gets blown out by BYU, then I think Texas Tech drops.
Yeah, like I said, they blew them out first time.
I get that.
So it'd be one blowout apiece. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
It will. But the odds of the way the last two seasons have gone, the odds of us getting chalked the next week is not great.
No, there's going to be some wrinkles in here, and I think you've spotted one. Ole Miss potentially losing / Lane leaving / we'll get you out of there, and I do, just looking at the board, I do think they will answer the question next week after these games, but without an obvious path. That Miami Notre Dame game, we can argue it all we want, but I think the answer ends with Notre Dame in the playoff. I think there's a better chance of Auburn beating Alabama than BYU beating Texas Tech. I agree. Texas Tech is not losing that game.
They didn't even play well against. I didn't think they played well against BYU and still beat them 29-7. They left so many points in the field in that game.
No, they're never in danger.
Never. I think Texas Tech got a better chance of losing at West Virginia than they do to BYU. As weird as that sounds.
I think because they're there. Arizona being put in the number 25 is meant to boost BYU if BYU beats Texas Tech.
Right.
I think that's what that was put in there for.
Yeah. So, all right, hour and 11 minutes.
Stayed on here strong.
That could be our
basketball game.
That's an all-time record for the All-American.
Had some fun conversations. This group of people, man, they like talking ball. You know what I mean?
Didn't feel like an hour. Just thought maybe the end of that basketball game did.
It was good.
So
it was
there
good.
You go. Anyway, all right. So a reminder to our CFB Nation All-America podcast listeners. This is it for the week. We'll be back Tuesday morning at 9:30 Eastern. But Irish Breakdown is going to be cooking all weekend, I'm sure. No, yes,
these
maybe.
Softies are taking Thanksgiving off.
So
we are too.
We appreciate everybody in here. We
are going to go live at Irish Breakdown at 8:15 tonight, just so people know, and we'll talk more about what all this means for Notre Dame. So if you are going to leave here, head over. Even if you're not a Notre Dame fan, head over to our Irish Breakdown channel at 8:15. We're going to go live and talk more about this stuff.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you to everyone for listening to the CFB Nation All-America podcast presented by FanDuel on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you to Irish Breakdown once again, your source for Notre Dame football information. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your holiday. Enjoy the football this weekend, and we will see you soon.